You're listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
This is the CRM Archaeology Podcast. It's the show where we pull back the veil of cultural resources management archaeology and discuss the issues that everyone is concerned about. Welcome to the podcast. Hello and welcome to the CRM Archaeology Podcast, episode 144 for August 28th, 2018. I'm your host, Chris Webster. On today's show, we talk about training and certifications in archaeology. So get ready to take notes because school is in session and because the CRM Archaeology Podcast starts right now. All right, welcome everyone to the CRM Archaeology Podcast. I am Chris Webster, and it's just me today because I wanted to talk to you just somewhat briefly about Team Black. I've been advertising this on this podcast. I've been advertising it on the Archaeotech podcast, and a number of people have actually taken some of the training webinars over there. But I wanted to talk to you guys about how this can help you as CRM archaeologists, academic archaeologists, whatever you are. There's probably something here that you can get from it. So if you want to follow along, I'm going to go over some things that are on the website. So head on over to arccert.black. There's no www. It's just arccert.black. And while you're doing that, I'll talk about the history of the Team Black concept and why it's called this, okay? So if you remember PCS, Professional Certifications for Scientists, that's something I came up with and started about 3 years ago. And I brought in a few people, and we changed them out a little bit based on availability. But it ended up being about 4 or 5 of us that were working on this. And the idea was to create a series of videos with short tests at the end, and then include that in a curriculum. And that curriculum, once finished, would make you a, quote, certified level 1, whatever, whether it's archaeology, geology, whatever we had. And that was the concept behind it. So certification was from us, and again, probably means nothing early on, but as that gains acceptance in the field and the industry, then people will understand what it means. And when you say, I am level 1 archaeologist with PCS, then they will understand what that means and go on from there. So we had some issues with PCS, and we ended up disbanding it a few years in because we weren't getting anywhere with it. I'm not sure what the problem was, but we just weren't getting anywhere with it. So we decided to, remove some team members. And then because of some legal issues, we ended up changing the name. And I kind of had to come up with something really fast because I wanted to keep the domain and all that there, but I also wanted to make sure we changed our branding across the board. And one of the concepts that I had been talking about with a couple other companies was this Team Black concept, or this Black Ops concept, where you have a team of archaeologists, like a strike team, that could just go anywhere. And I see a lot of CRM crews that way, especially CRM archaeologists that have been working across the nation in a lot of different areas for 10, 15, 20 years. They're highly experienced. They can pretty much drop in anywhere and do anything. And that is the concept that I wanted to promote. Because let's face it, when you have that as your skill set, the ability to go anywhere, do anything from drive a four-wheel drive vehicle in complicated conditions, to run a Trimble, to, set up a total station, to run a crew and run a project of 30 people. I mean, everything in between. So that concept was the Black Ops or Team Black concept, and that's what I ended up naming this, was Team Black. So that's where that comes from. And the mission of Team Black, as it states right on our website, is to provide practical educational videos, field guides, knowledge tests, professional certifications, and employment connections. And we're working on that a little bit at a time. But right when you see the homepage of the website, you're going to see 3 big buttons. One says training webinars, one says certification, the other one says resources. If you don't click into training webinars yet, if you're following along, but we'll go down the rest of the page. So the next thing you see is the calendar. It says upcoming live training, and it'll be on the month of whatever month you're in. And if you just hover over one of those items, it will give you information. If you click into it, it will allow you to reserve your spot. Now, the webinars I have up there right now are, one of them is called Using Tablets, although the icon says WTF, would I use a tablet? But it's on Using Tablets. And then I have another one on Fixing Your Digital Workflow, all about helping you through, you've got all these digital devices. How do you make them all work together without going crazy over it? Field Tech Basics. We have one called Location. There's another one on CV references and networking, call it Find a Job Now. There's another one on drawing, illustration, and artifacts and features on illustrating artifacts and features on a tablet. I've got one on drones for archaeology, an introduction. And then finally one on getting out of archaeology. So one of the hard things for people to do is make that decision to get out of archaeology. But I actually want to help you with that, because a lot of people say, well, I can't get out. I'm not really enjoying what I'm doing, but I don't have any other skills. I came in here right out of college and I don't know what to do. That's wrong. You have a ton of skills. You're an archaeologist. You went to college. You have a college degree. You have a lot of skills that you just don't realize or know how to write down and how to transition into actual usable terms that you can do that. So I actually had specific training in that when I was in the Navy. You have to take a course on becoming a civilian. For me, it wasn't that hard because I'd only been in for 4.5 years. But in one respect, it was kind of hard because I went in right out of high school. So I had never really been a professional, adult civilian. I went right out of high school into the Navy. But a lot of people spent 15, 20 years in the Navy, and they were in that class, and they really didn't know how to be a civilian. They didn't know how to interact with employers and stuff like that. I'm not necessarily going to go over that. What I am going to go over is how to translate your field skills into usable words that you can put on a resume and then get a job. And don't see it as, I don't know why I'm focusing on this one so much. I'm just going off on a tangent. Either way, I'm going to keep going. Don't see it as I'm going to get out of archaeology forever. This could be for people who work seasonally. There's a number of people that live in an area. They don't want to move. They live in an area like I do in Reno, where you really can only work maybe 7-8 months out of the year. And then for 4 months out of the year, there's too much snow on the ground. There's nothing you can do, maybe even longer in some areas. So you might need to get another job, and you might not know how to translate the skills that you have into another job. So the Getting Out of Archaeology webinar is designed around that. So let's talk about the webinar pricing a little bit. The webinars that are involved with you getting and keeping a job are free. That's right. They're free. The Field Tech Basics is free. Find a Job Now is also free. Okay. Those two are, I think those are the only two right now that I have for free, but either way, they don't cost you anything. I do them once a month. You can check the calendar. They repeat every month. And it's a live webinar with me. I'll send you a link to the Zoom conference room that I use. And I'll give you time for questions at the end. But it is an hour, and that's what I designed it for. I don't want to charge you to get and keep a job. That's just something I've decided to do. I'll have some others coming along in that line, but that's my philosophy on that. The stuff that helps you keep your job and level up and add bullet points to your resume, well, that does have a value and a cost, and I am going to charge you for that. But the cost is only $20. You may notice on some of the bigger societies and agencies, they have their own webinars, and they often cost $100 or more, even for members. So you're already a member, and they're still charging you $100 for this thing. Well, while we don't have some of the stuff on, say, Section 106, writing a proposal, a lot of stuff that they like to cover just yet, that is coming down the line. And not just from me. I'm not the only instructor here. I've got people working on some things that we're going to have available, and they will teach the course. So all that's coming down the line. As far as the Team Black concept goes, another thing I'm working on is actually recording all these webinars. You won't have the benefit of asking questions, which is kind of a huge thing, but you will get to see the webinar, and you will be able to take in all the information as much as possible. So I'm going to create a membership, basically. There's probably going to be 2 levels, one where it's just a monthly. You're just going to pay by the month, and when you've seen all the videos and you don't want to wait for any more to come out, that's it. You're done. You can exit the program and then not pay anymore. But there will also be an annual subscription where you'll get the added benefit of also being an Archaeology Podcast Network professional member, which gives you the whole swag package that we have and access to our Slack team and all that stuff. And I may, if there's a demand for it, set up just a separate Slack team so you can communicate with other members in this community that are associated with Team Black. That will be a monthly cost. It might be $5 a month or something just to maintain the Slack team. But you can pay that, and we'll have an annual pricing on that as well. And just be part of a private community where you can really talk about stuff. I know there's Facebook and things like that, but sometimes you just don't want to air your business on Facebook because you don't know who's over there. So you can come over to the Team Black Slack team and say whatever you want amongst actual peers and colleagues. Okay. So some of the other things we have on here, if I click on certification button, you can see what our certification policy is and what we're going to be working towards. We don't have this yet, and I'm not going to start it until there's a full curriculum out and it's all ready to go. It's not just these webinars, it's a whole bunch of other videos. So, but you can see what the thinking is and a couple of the examples, and then give us your opinion on that and how you think it is. One of the more powerful things I have on here is called resources. If I click on that, that takes me to, and there's some reworking that has to be done of this a little bit. But the first thing this takes me to is a directory of United States archaeological CRM firms. There's a ton of them on here. If your firm's not on here, or if you see a firm that's either changed names or is no longer in operation, please let us know, and we'll get you added immediately. I've had a few people contact me and say their firm wasn't on there because they're new or we just didn't find it, and then get them on there. I also have one, if you look down the left side, if you're looking on a website called State Forms, and this is links. And again, if you notice any of these links are broken because we can't check them all, they were fine when we put them up, but things change. But these are links to online site forms from different states. It's either they have an online entry system or it's an access to their PDF or Word documents that they want you to use for recording in the field. And it's for all the states that we could find that actually had something. So check that out. Another link is state societies. So we have different local archaeological societies and associations across the country listed right here for easy use, along with their URL so you can find them. If you go to useful links, again, a list of useful links, and if anything's broken, please let us know. And if you want to add anything to this, also please let us know. And then finally, we have societies and conferences. So if you go to that page, you can see most of the conferences, the bigger conferences and regional conferences that different groups have listed throughout the United States. Typically, if we can add some worldwide stuff in here, we just didn't. So there's some international stuff on here, but if there's something you want added to this list, really just let me know and I'll put it on here, because there's no reason not to have it on there. We also have the rough dates, like for Society for Historical Archaeology, I have January because that's typically when it is. And for Society for American Archaeology, the SAAs, I have March/April because that's typically when it is. The PECOS conference, I should have looked at my own thing and I wanted to go, but I totally forgot about it. It's in early August typically, although I think it was in more mid-August this year. And yeah, so we have a bunch of stuff on there. So check all that out. Again, Team Black is something that I want to be a resource for everyone to use. I want it to be something that, you go back to monthly and just refresh your memory on stuff. Again, there's not a ton of information there right now from the webinar standpoint, but there will be some coming down the line. And the more people that take these webinars, and more specifically, I'll be honest with you, take the paid ones, adds more resources into the coffer that allow me to not only create some of the other courses, but find people and compensate them for creating other courses. I'm reluctant to contact people if I can't pay them for their time. So if we want to make this happen, or if you want to put together a course, let me know. I'll add you to the list and we can afford to pay you, unless you want to do it on a volunteer basis, which that's completely up to you. But we can put together this course and then have it available online for people to check out. So we're going to take a break right now, and when we come back, I'm going to run through one of the sample webinars from Team Black, and you won't have the visuals. You're going to have to check out the webinar for that, but I'm going to do the audio portion of the webinar and give you a little flavor of what it's all about. Back in a second. Are you tired of the webinars and training offered by the big organizations not being free for members and not really covering what we need? Team Black has the answers. Check out arccert.black/main for our upcoming webinar schedule. All of our webinars happen once a month, and seating is limited. Learn everything from field tech basics to drones to digital workflows. We have more classes coming online every month. Classes are always 1 hour and cost just $20. Classes like building a CV and getting a job are always free. That's right, we'll help you get a job, then we'll be here when you want to level up your skills. If you are a professional subscriber to the APN at arcpodnet.com/members, then you get all of Team Black's offerings for free as part of your membership. We have Team Black memberships coming that will give the same for the APN. So $20 a month gets you all the APN swag and extras, plus free training from Team Black. So check out arccert.black for more information and level up your skill set today. That's arccert.black. Hey, podcast fans and digital archaeologists. Have you heard about WildNote? It's a data collection app that works online or offline on your smartphone or tablet, iOS or Android. It allows you to collect field data easily, manage data efficiently, and generate data reports and site records effortlessly. We have a growing list of state site forms built in for your use and some generic forms that will work anywhere. Check out the shovel testing and photograph forms. You can get a free all-access 30-day trial today by going to wildnoteapp.com. That's wildnoteapp.com for your free 30-day trial. Now back to the show. All right, welcome back to the CRM Archaeology Podcast, episode 144. So as I mentioned, I'm going to go through a portion of one of the free webinars from Team Black, and it is the jobs webinar. So I'm going to do that. This is exactly what we would run through if we were doing the webinar and you were participating. The only difference is you can't ask me any questions. So if you want to ask me questions about any of this stuff, then please sign up for the webinar at arccert.black. Here we go. So I start with the main screen that has the webinar on it. The first thing I like to see whenever somebody is giving a webinar is an outline. Okay, so on this one, we'll cover cover letters, CVs and resumes, references, finding a job, networking, and then we'll take your questions. Except in this case, I won't take your questions. Although if you send me an email, chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com, I'll take your questions. Again, the next thing I like to see is some information about the instructor. Why the hell is this person talking to me about all this stuff? So I have my whole thing on here. Chris Webster, MS, RPA. I was in the Navy from 1993 to 1997. BA in anthropology from the University of North Dakota in 2005. Olduvai Gorge Field School in 2005. Field technician, mostly East Coast, 2005-2009. MS in archaeological resource management from the University of Georgia at Athens, 2010. Field tech, crew chief, project manager, various positions from 2010 to 2012, where I started my own company, DigTech LLC. Started the Archaeology Podcast Network in 2014. Started PCS in 2015, which turned into Team Black in 2017. And I started with WildNote in January of 2018 and will likely be going more full-time with them shortly as we ramp up over there. Okay, so now let's get into it. So this first segment is called Your Tools. We're going to talk about the cover letter, the resume or CV, and your references. The first thing up is a cover letter. So what does a cover letter do? It's your first introduction into the company. It's your first introduction to a person that doesn't even know you that says, this is who I am. It shows professionalism because some people don't ask for cover letters, but when they do, they get a whole hodgepodge of different things. And it's the Wild West out there of what you're actually going to get. But if you do a proper cover letter and you know the format, which we'll go over in a minute, it does show a level of professionalism, especially if the person receiving the cover letter actually knows what one looks like and what it's supposed to do as well. That is a helpful skill. And if you're sending to a larger company, they likely have an HR department that knows all about cover letters because they get them from other service industries, so they know what they're looking for. Shows a little bit of training and technical skill. You know how to put together a word processed document. You know how to PDF that document and send it in. If you send me a docx file as an employer, if you send me that, a Word document, I won't even look at it. I will immediately delete it and break off all contact with you. You just don't do it. I'm just telling you that right now. It shows that you can follow instructions, especially if a cover letter was asked for. If they specifically say, don't send me a cover letter, I don't know why they would ever do that, but don't send one in. So follow the instructions. It also helps to formalize assumptions because as we're going to go over here in a second, there's a lot of stuff in the cover letter that will really kind of break down what your assumptions are and about not only the job, but about, your own abilities and how that's going to work. And finally, it sets the contact information. Sometimes that can be hard to find. Sometimes it's buried on your resume somewhere or whatever. But this first thing will show how they can contact you and when they can contact you. So a cover letter has 5 parts. Let's go over the first part right now. The heading, super simple. Upper right-hand corner, you've got your address, city, state, zip code. Left formatted, but in the upper right-hand side of the page. And then on the left side of the page, coming down, you'll have the date. You'll have the block that is for the company that you're sending it to. I have Human Resources down here as an example, and then DigTech LLC as a company, and then the city and state, Reno, Nevada. Part 2 is the introduction. This now includes an introductory phrase. I just like to use to whom it may concern, unless you know exactly who you're sending it to. Then you can say Ms. or Mr. whatever, comma, or colon, or you can say dear. Dear is okay. It's not a term of endearment, so to speak. It's not something when you're writing a letter to your grandmother. You can say dear. It's a commonly accepted form of addressing somebody in a letter. Then you have a subject colon, and I have here, because this is a real world example, Shovelbum's job posting. You could have Archaeology Field Tech job posting, or whatever you want. So wherever you saw the job, that's where you would have the subject line there. Or perhaps you just heard about the job, then you would put work in Utah in July or something, whatever that is, so they know what you're referencing. And then that first paragraph, part of the introduction. On here I saw your posting for summer fieldwork on shovelbums.org on March 15th. The posting was for work out of your Reno, Nevada office. So that establishes where you saw the posting, so they know that you give them a little boost on their marketing, how that's working, and exactly what the job is for, because if it's a larger company, they could have posted for 5 different jobs, and they need to know exactly what you're sending in an application for. Part 3 is the body, and I'll just read this out and then we'll talk about it. I am currently working in the eastern Mojave of California on a project that is nearing completion. Weather and terrain conditions are similar to those of much of Nevada. The next paragraph. Your pay scale was listed as $25 to $35 per hour. I'm currently working on a project around the middle of that pay range, but I'm looking for a company that is willing to train me to higher positions and pay scales. I'm well versed in all phases of contract archaeology, and I'm working through training courses with Team Black. Of course, I had to put that in there. So this is establishing where you're doing, what you're doing, how it relates to the job that you're trying to get. And then I threw in a little bit about pay here, because I don't think you should dance around that question. I mean, if they're not going to pay you enough, don't go there. I mean, just straight up, and let them know why. So you're currently getting this much. This is what somebody else values you at. This is the range you're working in right now, and you're willing to train up and learn new things and constantly improve yourself. I don't think there's anything wrong with that as an employer. And then part 4, your contact information. This is another paragraph down here. It says, I've attached my CV and references. In addition, here's my LinkedIn profile, and then I have the link right there. I can be reached at my phone number or be emailed at my email address. Okay. So what this does is it does a few things. It says what you're including in this little package, and it says what you can be reached at and where you can be reached at. And I said I included the LinkedIn profile. One thing that shows me as an employer is that you understand some online resources, you understand professionalism, you can put that together, even if you don't use LinkedIn, even if you've never logged into LinkedIn before, but you have an account, maybe you logged into it once and you haven't logged into it since. If you can go over there, put together a profile, organize it to suit your needs, and get some things in there. For me, somebody who's really digital focused and digitally minded, that tells me that you understand those things and how to use them. And when I throw an iPad at you and say, here, go record sites, you're not going to look like I just threw a nuclear bomb at you and you're going to explode. Part 5 is the closing. And this, again, is just super simple. Keep it easy. I put thank you, comma, space, 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 paragraph, 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 then my name, and then I put the number of enclosures down at the bottom. And that just means the number of attachments. So I do the space, space, space because always sign this thing. I find a digital way to sign. If you have an Apple computer, use Preview. Super easy. If you don't, you can use some of the Adobe products. Find some way to digitally sign. If you're not digitally signing PDFs right now in 2018, you need to figure that out. It's super easy to do. There's a ton of apps that'll do it, and you just need to do that. If you print something out, sign it, and then rescan it, that is super obvious and looks like you just stepped out of 1999. So don't do that. Okay, so let's talk about the resume, or the curriculum vitae, which is what a CV is. And curriculum vitae is Latin for basically, it's a little complicated, but basically the story of your life. So we'll talk about the resume first. Resumes are typically 1 page. They can be 2 pages, but I like to shoot for 1 page because a resume is supposed to be succinct. I have a summary at the top of this example resume that you'll see if you take the webinar. And it basically says, an ambitious, teachable archaeological technician with a proven track record of contributing to the success of archaeological work wherever I go. That's just a statement. That's a statement of who you are. I have select accomplishments next. I have professional experience after that. And again, it's just a few things that relate directly to the project I'm trying to get. I wouldn't put on my East Coast experience if I'm looking for a project in Nevada or Utah. I wouldn't put in my Southern California experience if I'm looking for a project in Nevada, unless Maybe I was monitoring in Southern California and I'm going to be doing a very similar monitoring project in Nevada. Then I would absolutely put that down. Then I have education, just as simple. Here's your, Bachelor of Arts or Master of Science, Master of Arts, whatever you're going to put down. Drop those couple things there because they are required for the job, typically. And then I have, on my personal one, I have technical skills, just some things that I want them to know that I am proficient in, just some really quick stuff. Finally, I organized this in sort of a creative way. I have a few company logos and a brief statement of what I did on the left column. All that other text I just told you about is in the right 2/3, and in the left third, I have just 3 companies listed here that I made up and some statements. And then a shadow box statement at the bottom that is a quote from somebody talking about me, like basically a reference for me. And then at the very bottom, I have my contact information. So that's it. Resumes should be super simple. Again, if you go on to 2 pages, it just means you didn't think hard enough about getting it onto 1 page. I think if you can't get it onto 1 page, then you need to learn to be a little bit more succinct. A CV, however, is completely the opposite. So CVs can be, 20 pages. I mean, it's the story of your life. And it's got everything on there that you've done as an archaeologist. And my CV has on the front page, it's kind of a little bit of a truncated resume from a certain standpoint. I start with education because that is required, and I really dig into the education. I don't just say I graduated, in 2010 with an MS in archaeological resource management. I say what the title of my thesis was, and I have a bullet points on what my studies included for that master's degree. I have a similar thing for my undergraduate degree, the date I completed that, and then some studies that I had on there because I think they're very relevant. Then I have, because I work in Nevada typically, and in Nevada, when you work for another company, you need to get permitted as a BLM archaeologist at certain levels. And they require this work experience sheet. Well, I have a work experience graph on there that illustrates the months I have as a crew member, as an archaeological crew chief, as a supervisor in non-archaeology projects, just to show that I have other supervisory experience, and as a project manager. And I have all that listed in months. And then I have another box that has some details about my qualifications. I'm Nevada BLM permittable as a principal investigator, historic statewide and prehistoric statewide, my MSHA certification, my RPA member since, Society for American Archaeology member since, member of the Nevada Archaeological Association, member of the Nevada Mining Association, member of the Geological Society of Nevada. I've got all that listed on there. And then after that, I have work experience detail. And this is really detailed. I only have maybe 3 or 4 companies per page. And I have all my work experience detailed. I have in bold the company name, and then indented, not in bold, the location, the date range, my responsibility, my job title, and then all the things that I did. If there's any key projects that everybody knows about, I'll put that on there as well, so they can understand exactly what I did. And I put this in chronological order. So as a shovelman, you may work for one company 5 different times over the course of 6 years. I don't put all that in one block. I put it all chronologically. So they'll actually physically appear 5 different times in this chronological list. That's just how I do it. Never heard anybody tell me any different. So when I get to the end of the work experience, I have a kind of a half line that goes halfway across the page, left to right, just to note that you're at the end of a section. And then I start the next section, which is military education and experience for me, on the next page. And then at the end of that whole section, I have another line to signify the end of the section. And then I start a new section with a new header, company and technology, computers and technologies. And that just shows some of the things that I am capable of doing. One of the other things about your CV that I'll note, because it's multiple pages, I put the page numbers at the bottom. So they may receive, hundreds of CVs, and somebody will just print them all out probably, and it could get all mixed up. So I have Chris Webster dash the page number. So Chris Webster -1, Chris Webster -2, Chris Webster -3. That's what I have on there. Actually, I don't have a Chris Webster -1 because my name is on the front. So, but after page 1, it says Chris Webster -2, -3, -4, as you can see going on from there. References, at least 3 references, okay? They'll probably ask for at least 3 references, but even if they just say include your CV, resume, and references, always put at least 3 in there. Make sure they're not just other field techs or whatever position you're in. Make sure they're leaders. Even if you're a project manager, you had somebody leading you. If you're a principal investigator, somebody owned the company. If you're a company owner and you're looking for work, well, I don't know what to tell you. Just look for look for other people that can give you a good reference. constantly revise these after each job or year. Okay, so after each field season, or when you're done with a job, you can say to somebody, if you had a great experience, hey, can I add you to my list of references? Just do it right then and there. Don't ask them you finish the job in August. Don't ask them in February when you look at the next season, hey, can I use you as a reference? Ask them now at the end of the project. Can I add you to my list of references? And that way it's done. You don't forget, you're moving on, because you're probably looking for another job anyway, and you want to use that. When it does come time around for the next field season, just double check with all your references, send them a quick email, send them a call, catch up and say, hey, can I leave you on my list of references? Because it might have been too long and they can't actually give a good reference. You remember them really well because they're one person, but they worked with 200 different people that year and may not actually remember you that well and will be uncomfortable with having you to give a reference to. Okay, one last thing on this is file names. So I don't know how many times I've received documents from somebody and it was like, my CV.pdf or even worse, my CV.docx. Oh my God, I can't stand that. So I have 4 documents listed on the screen here, which you would see again, arccert.black if you were taking the webinar. Chris Webster coverletter.pdf, Chris Webster CV.pdf, Chris Webster references.pdf, and then something Nevada specific because they all ask for it, Chris Webster BLM permit.pdf. I'm not going to wait for them to ask for my BLM permitting document credentials. I'm just going to send it to them so they can send it right in, when they accept me for the job. That'll be done. They don't have to ask for it. I won't have to put it together. It's ready to go. Done. Boom. Send it in. So again, the file naming convention here, they're going to receive hundreds and hundreds of applications for that job because that's just how this goes. And they're going to drop all those into a folder and yours is going to get lost amongst the 15 others that are named my resume or my CV.pdf. Okay. So add your name, call it out, do the employer a favor, and they will remember that. Absolutely. All right. Finding a job. There are lots of ways to find work, and we're going to go over a few of those right now. So job search sites. Of course, there's Shovelbums. Shovelbums.org, for one reason or another, is not always updated with the current job positions. You have to go to the Yahoo group, and I have the link if you want it. But it's groups.yahoo.com and then some other stuff. But if you just go to Yahoo and type in Shovelbums group, you'll probably find it. But that's where the most current things are. And if you're actively searching for a job and you're subscribed to this, don't wait for the digest email to come out the next morning. It's probably too late by that point, okay? Be on that website, be refreshing it every hour, and wait for a new job to pop up, and then have your information ready to go. Tailor it for that job if you need to make any changes, and then send it off. So you're the first one in the door, okay? If you wait for that digest to come out, well, some people have already done that. Some people already sent their information in the day before, and by the time the digest comes out, they've probably already staffed the crew, and they're done. That's how quick this stuff can happen. Another great one is archaeologyfieldwork.com, and they have a lot of great job postings over there. There's a lot of other stuff you can do as well. There's discussion boards. There's all kinds of things, so certainly go check that out. If you're looking at government jobs, again, Archaeology Fieldwork will link to a lot of these. Shovelbums doesn't usually do it, but they're going to link you over to USA Jobs, and usajobs.gov is where you find your Forest Service, Park Service type jobs, BLM jobs. They're all listed on USA Jobs. Even if you're not looking for a job in USA Jobs, or you think you might at some point in the future, do yourself a favor and go over there, sign up for an account, and upload all the information and fill all the things out, because it could take hours. It could take a couple hours for you to do all that. And if you're in serious job hunting mode, knock that step out first. Then once you have that profile, you can just go to the other job and submit your name. They might have you take a little test or do a little thing, but you can submit your name without going through that other couple hours first, because other people have already done that, and they're getting in before you. Social media, becoming a great place to find jobs. I see tons of people on Facebook posting on the Archaeo Field Techs group and the North American Archaeological Tech Forum groups. There's people just posting for jobs over there, and sometimes they ask for requirements, sometimes they don't, but it gives you a chance to comment. Sometimes, and this is a good or bad, take it or leave it, but sometimes you'll see comments about, don't ever work for this company. Or conversely, this company is amazing, go work for them. I've got a job right now, and I can't apply, but you should apply because they're awesome. You do also see that occasionally. LinkedIn, your profile is searchable. It's some people might be looking over there for archaeologists that maybe they don't really know what they're looking for, and they don't know where to go. They don't know about Shovelbums, but they need an archaeologist for a job, or maybe they need a company or something like that. they'll search usually geographically and say archaeologist and see who has that linked in their profile. So it might be a good way for someone to contact you for work. If you want, it's not incredibly active, but there are thousands of people in there. You can go to the Cultural Resource Management group. I'm actually a moderator over there, so I can actually approve you for that once you join it. But join that group, and sometimes people post stuff over there, but a lot of times it's just an area for you to maybe interact with other CRM professionals in that setting. Of course, company websites, big firms will often just have their job postings on a company website. They don't need to post anywhere else because everybody knows to go to their website when they want a job and see what's posted there. So some of the bigger ones, like the ones that are more engineering firms, they will often have job listing sites. And quite often you have to apply through their site as well to get that job. So check that out. There's also contacting direct. You can just call somebody or email them and basically ask for a job. Some of the benefits of that is it does show some initiative, put your name in front of them first, and allows you to talk about future work and things that are going on. Some of the costs are you're not following directions. Some of the job postings specifically say, do not call us. We don't have the time for it. So do not call us. If you call them anyway, well, they're probably going to file your application appropriately and you'll never hear from them again. Don't be annoying. Don't call them more than once if you are going to call them. If you do make that decision, don't just keep calling every month and saying, hey, do you have work? Do you have work? Do you have work? If they like you, they wrote your name down and they put you in a list that says, let's call these people when we have work. If they're not calling you, then they either don't have work or they don't like you for some reason. Take the hint and move on. Know your audience. For example, the age of the PI or the HR person that you're talking to. Just kind of know who they are. Listen to them. Ask them some questions. Get a sense of how they are, whether or not you can maybe joke around with them, maybe whether or not you should, and maybe try to find some common ground. Anything that will help you stick out in their mind versus somebody else. And the last section here is on networking. So conferences are a great place for networking. You can meet people. You can, of course, go to different papers and learn things, but honestly, I think that's starting to die a little bit. That's only evident to me by the fact that there's never anybody in the rooms. There's people, usually it's just their friends, but you go see a paper and there's 7 to 8, 10, seats full, maybe even only 2 or 3. And the person's giving this paper that they spent a year working on or spent 9 months working on and, or more likely finished in the hallway before they're stressed out all the way in. And it's even worse if it's on like a Sunday morning and nobody's there, but anyway, conferences in the hallways, in the lobby of the hotel, in the lunch area where everybody's eating, in the snack area, if there's a coffee area, in the exhibit hall, in the bars. Even if you don't drink, go to the bar, grab a soda, grab a glass of water, have some iced tea, whatever you're going to do, and just hang out and talk to people. That's where the networking happens. You might not even talk about work, but when a job does come around, they'll be like, oh, I remember them. I talked to them at the SAAs, or I talked to them at the California meetings, or the Great Basin Conference, or the Midwest, or the MAC, the SEAC, whatever, all the acronyms. So talk to people there. Don't have lunch alone. Don't have dinner alone, and make those conversations happen. Social events. Of course, your local archaeologist might be having certain social events that are open to everyone. If you find out that a bunch of archaeologists, again, going out to a bar because that's what they do, go hang out, go show up and introduce yourself and say, hey, I follow you guys on Facebook and you said you were doing this thing and I showed up and here I am. And again, don't be annoying, but sit there and have a conversation and have a good time and get to know them. Social media is your personal brand. Social media is a great place to find work, but it's also a great place to lose work. So if you're a jerk on social media, or you're constantly negative, or you're constantly putting other people down, or saying how you don't like the field and you're complaining about this and that and the other thing, well, if you go to apply for a job, you might not get hired because people think that you're just a downer all the time and they don't want that kind of person on their crew. Or if that one thing goes wrong when they're working for you, when you're working for them, you're just going to badmouth them online, and nobody wants that. So be careful with social media. Be careful with what you're posting in those groups where all the archaeologists are, and be careful who you allow on your friends page, on your Facebook friends list, because everybody can see what you post. They probably won't because algorithms, but that's a different story. And of course, your personal network is a great place for networking. A lot of people if you've been doing this for even 1 year, even one season. Keep tabs on those people. Again, friend them on the social medias. It's easier than writing down their contact information sometimes. and easier making a phone call, and just engage with them every once in a while. You never know when somebody you worked with as a field tech might be in a position to give you a job later on, or you might be in a position to give them a job later on, or not. It depends on your relationship with them. Be careful about burning bridges. I've burned a lot of bridges in my life. I learned a lot of lessons from that. Some of those bridges, I don't want to ever be rebuilt. Let's just put that out there. I'm good that there's no contact with that bridge. It's gone. It's done. However, sometimes that's not always a good thing. You don't need to just burn bridges to burn bridges. But again, burn that shit down if it needs to be burned down. But if it doesn't, and you just made a mistake, maybe try to repair that a little bit. Try to go back, say hi at a conference, do something. It's not going to happen right away. They're probably not going to hire you right away, depending on how bad the interaction was. But show that you're the bigger person and start the process of rebuilding that bridge. Okay, well, that is it for that. Again, go over to Team Black, check out the webinars, arccert.black. And that particular webinar was free. It happens every month. Check out the times. If those times don't work for you, either wait for the videos to come out or simply send me an email, chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com, Chris Webster at digtech-llc.com, whatever you want. Comment on this page and say what would be a good time for you. I'm interested in moving times around. Right now, the times are convenient for me because I don't have input from anyone else. But I want the times to be convenient for everyone. So again, check that out, arccert.black. And I hope everyone has a great 2 weeks to the next episode. And again, if you have anybody you want us to interview, then send the information our way. Send me a long email about arccert.black and people you want me to interview and your general thoughts and feelings about CRM. I want to read it. I won't tell anybody. Just send it to me. Okay, thanks a lot, everybody, and we'll see you next time. That's it for another episode of the CRM Archaeology Podcast. Links to some of the items mentioned on the show are in the show notes for this podcast, which can be found at www.arcpodnet.com/CRMArchPodcast. Please comment and share anywhere you see the show. If you'd like us to answer a question on a future episode, email us. Use the contact form on the website, or just email chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com. Support the show and the network at arcpodnet.com/members. Get some swag and extra content while you're there. Send us show suggestions and interview suggestions. We want this to be a resource for field technicians everywhere, and we want to know what you want to know about. Thanks to everyone for joining me this week. Thanks also to the listeners for tuning in, and we'll see you in the field. Goodbye. This show is produced and recorded by the Archaeology Podcast Network, Chris Webster and Tristan Boyle, in Reno, Nevada, at the Reno Collective.
This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.arcpodnet.com. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.
Thanks again for listening to this episode and for supporting the Archaeology Podcast Network. If you want these shows to keep going, consider becoming a member for just $7.99 US a month. That's cheaper than a venti quad eggnog latte. Go to arcpodnet.com/members for more info.